Very lucky today to be talking DeFi, Vidling, and the future of Ethereum with Vitalik Buterin, Joe Lubin, and Yoni Assia. To cap the day discussing all of these things, please welcome to the stage Vitalik Buterin, founder of Ethereum, Joseph Lubin, co-founder of Ethereum and founder and CEO of Consensus, and the founder and CEO of eToro, Yoni Assia.
Okay, very excited that both of you are here in Israel. So thank you very much, Consensus and Ethereal, for making this real. We're very excited to get the love and affection of Ethereum here in Israel. I wanted to start with basically some of the history of Ethereum. So I think I got my first email from you.
Pre-Ethereum.
What?
Pre-Ethereum.
Pre-Ethereum. When you sent me an email, I think in 2012, around colored coins, when there was a discussion and tokenization, people thought would happen on top of the Bitcoin network. And then you spent some time here in Israel on looking at the master coin, which is now the Omni, and working together with us on the colored coins protocol. Tell us a bit about sort of what you took from that trip to Israel, which is sort of a big honor for the Israeli community, and then a bit about how you guys met and the foundation of Ethereum and what you thought back then would really be the purpose of Ethereum.
Yeah, so this was around late 2013, and I was traveling around different Bitcoin communities around the world, trying to see what kinds of things people were up to, what kinds of things people were building, trying to understand and participate in the community better. And I decided to make one of the stops in my journey Israel because I heard that Israel had a lot of smart Bitcoin people. And there were a lot of really cool projects, colored coins being one of them, Mastercoin being one of them. Also just smart independent people like Manny Rosenfeld were here. And so I thought, hey, maybe I should spend some time here and just talk to people and work with people here. I mean, I had already been working on colored coin stuff on and off for a while. The colored coins people, including Yoni, were kind enough to offer 10 Bitcoin bounties for doing some colored coins client work. And myself, as a starving university student, found the thought of being paid $170 to work on Bitcoin immensely exciting. And yeah, I got into the technology, found the idea of colored coins really interesting. When I discovered Mastercoin, found the ideas behind Mastercoin and of expanding beyond colored coins really exciting. And that was kind of the kickoff point from where I realized that, hey, if you take these ideas and you start generalizing them more and you start taking them further, then something like Ethereum becomes possible.
So what was the time span between you doing some of the colored coin, master coin work and you in November 2013 writing the first version of the Ethereum white paper?
Yeah, so my first trip to Israel was basically the entire month of October 2013.
You worked fast.
I tell people I take pride. It's like a gallery owner having Picasso be there for like a month painting stuff, and I'm like, wow, that he was in my gallery. So a big part. So when you started Ethereum, you were very kind to send us the white paper, and then I remember that the Bitcoin community back then were very clear that this will not work. Right? So even back then,
it's impossible.
It is impossible. Every person you talked about from at least the Bitcoin community in Israel, maybe that was different in different places, was very maximalist at the time. Tell us a bit about your experience throughout that and today with sort of those who are maximalizing Bitcoin versus Ethereum.
Yeah, I mean, at the time I was definitely very disheartened and disappointed. Because I really thought that kind of crypto was on the same team, and that pluralism and having multiple coins and people trying out different things, this was the free market, and we were all about believing in the free market, and and the value of like experimentation and being able to choose between different systems and all of those things. And like this mentality that kind of Bitcoin is the only legitimate cryptocurrency that is really strong that I was faced with, like that was a big jarring surprise at the time. And since then, obviously, a lot of things have happened. I mean, Bitcoin has had its fork and its kind of big moment where I think the community kind of decided, with a lot of dissenters, but as a whole, decided on focusing on this kind of store of value narrative that just said, Bitcoin is store of value and it is money, and use cases other than money are kind of things that we kind of do not really want. And that's something that, I mean, in a lot of like, I don't know. I think it's fine. Like in a lot of ways, kind of gives breathing room to the Ethereum ecosystem, because it's basically saying that, like, this is sound money, and this over here is a protocol that's trying to be kind of maximally safe and stable, and even kind of drive away these other use cases.
You're saying it reduces pressure.
Yeah, it reduces
to not
pressure.
try and be money.
Exactly. Well, it reduces the risk that there will be a kind of conflict between wanting to be money and some other goal, because like we've already agreed that money just wins. And on the Ethereum side, well, it just means that like the applications that are not money come over to Ethereum. And I mean, lately we've even been seeing some Bitcoin people starting of warming up to participating in the Ethereum ecosystem and kind of starting to see the two as being complements rather than like zero-sum like fight to the death competitors, and like that's really cool.
Yeah, so ultimately we are all on the same team. Maybe we're young protocols in our adolescence, and we're a little tribal and competitive, religious wars. But we're all building the decentralized World Wide Web. We're all building a trust foundation upon which we can build better systems for the planet, and it's going to involve decentralized money and decentralized application platforms and decentralized storage and decentralized bandwidth and decentralized identity. And as we build bridges between the different protocols, and we've been doing that for a few years already, and that's increasing, I think the religious rhetoric will probably die out.
So would you consider both of you to be Ethereum maximalists or crypto maximalists in general?
Decentralized protocol maximalists.
Yeah, decentralized protocol maximalists.
Perfect. So a lot of the discussions now are around Ethereum 2.0. I'm jumping to the future versus the past. Tell us in like both of your views on what is Ethereum 2.0, where non-technical people can understand.
Yeah, and Ethereum 2.0 is basically the kind of the updated attempts to realize the same vision. It's basically taking all of these ideas and values of open permissionless networks where anyone can participate, and decentralized collaboration, and trying to expand them to go beyond like just one application like money, and try to basically create this kind of sandbox where people can build and try different things and see what works. Except, so that part of the vision's I think the same that it always has been. But the thing that has changed is the tools that we're using to build it, right? So Ethereum 1.0 single chain, Ethereum 2.0 sharded, Ethereum 1.0 proof of work, Ethereum 2.0 proof of stake, Ethereum 1.0 RLP hexary Merkle patricia trees, Ethereum 2.0 SSZ binary Merkle trees, Ethereum 1.0 256-bit EVM, Ethereum 2.0 optimized and standardized WebAssembly. So a lot of things are kind of...
Does that mean, though, that all the contracts and everything that was built on Ethereum 1.0, will that be portable to Ethereum 2.0?
The current plan is yes. So we do have a strategy for basically taking the Ethereum 1.0 state root and kind of migrating it over and plugging it in so that the ecosystem can kind of continue to exist, and basically will be interoperable with things created in Ethereum 2.0 directly.
And is there going to be a fork? Is there
No, there won't be a fork. There
people
will be
can keep their original
two
Ethereum?
parallel systems, and a fairly smooth migration is planned from Ethereum 1 into Ethereum 2. And at a higher, more conceptual level, Ethereum 1 you could think of as a prototype. It was an impossible project that got built, and we needed to put out something that we knew wouldn't be scalable. We needed to do that to figure out how to build decentralized applications, figure out the developer tooling and the infrastructure that we needed to build them and deploy them. We needed to figure out whether it's possible to build companies around decentralized applications, because a number of years ago, people just thought, no, it's all code out in the open. The margins would go down to zero. There'd be people copying everybody back and forth. And of course, that's not true, because there's so much to building a product and a service in a company outside of the actual pure technology. We needed to build a trust foundation and figure out what we could build on top of that. Turns out we can build a financial
you're
plumbing
saying
layer.
That the concept of launching something that doesn't scale and then rebuilding
Sure.
it as
It
something
scales-
scalable
it
was
scales
in the
somewhat.
initial plans or initial
Yeah, we
thinking.
knew it wasn't going to be scalable for sure. But now we've been able to build some things that make use of the scalability. So decentralized finance doesn't, in its current size, as we're fleshing out that space, it doesn't actually require extreme scalability, and we can start building some verticals on top of that. We can also build scalability at layer 2 on top of Ethereum 1, and of course multiply all that by 1024 as Ethereum 2.0 comes online.
When is the date? When is Ethereum 2.0? Roughly, like Libra, in halves.
It's going to be spread over time. We're hoping that phase 0 of 3 major phases will be launched. We actually have 9 different teams working on it, and 7 of them came into sync last week with a version of the protocol. And so we're hoping to get things launched in Q1 of 2020. But that will provide a proof of stake heartbeat to the system, and there will be bridges from Ethereum 1 to Ethereum 2, and probably bridges back to enable a smooth transition from protocol version 1 to protocol version 2. And phase 1 and phase 2 that will effectively complete the system are likely to be released simultaneously. That's the current thinking. And
So you're saying before Libra?
well, who knows what Libra will release as its first release? So they may release
I'm
some,
trying to
some
organize
sort of,
some
sort of bare bones
clickbaits
thing.
for the press.
That's a good idea. So Ethereum 2.0 will always be much more functional than Libra.
Ooh, here's clickbait. Okay, so if we jumped on that,
You wanted clickbait. I went for it.
yeah. So what are your thoughts on Libra, Vitalik?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the astrological side is kind of cool. Like you got the scales. I mean, I prefer Capricorn, but yeah.
I'm Sagittarius.
Yeah. I mean, the Facebook organized Libra.
I'll jump in.
Sure. Yeah.
So I was very excited about the Libra project when I heard about it. I was excited because it's validation for all the things we've been saying and doing for a very long time. I was excited.
Validation, no pun intended.
No pun intended. They use all the same words, all the same phrases. They may not have had the same intent, but still the possibility of a system like that that had open wallets where we could sort of interoperate with different tokens, and they would bring so many more people, so much more attention to our ecosystem, but also they would do things suboptimally. There would be significant weaknesses in the architecture of their system, and we could point to those things, and we could ask people whether they prefer to be dependent on 30 or 100 corporate validators, or whether they wanted a much more maximally decentralized architecture. I do believe that there should be lots of systems like Libra out in the world. JP Morgan, there are many other price stable token systems and financial instruments on top of that
the
are
JP
being
Morgan
built. Yeah.
blockchain,
So-
which is on Ethereum, but also on its own. Is that also a potential competitor for Ethereum?
Well, JP Morgan's system is going to be quite internal for a while amongst their customers, and I don't know whether they have plans to externalize it. They probably do. They probably want to make it into a payment and financial instrument system for the world.
Honestly, I think within a couple of years, a bunch of these permission consortium chains are just going to be running on Ethereum 2.0 as execution environments.
So you're thinking basically that all converges into basically permissioned as a shard or a part of the network, and they communicate with one another.
Sure. So similar to the way lots of different intranets were run by companies because they liked the web protocols, but they didn't have the scalability of the web in the 90s. They didn't have the security, the privacy, the confidentiality. When all of that became established, then they moved their infrastructure onto an architecture that was easier to interoperate on and cheaper to run their systems on.
Let's talk a bit about DAOs.
Ooh, those are fun.
Those are fun. So I really, when the first DAO came out, I was very excited. I read the paper and I sent to everybody at eToro like this big gushing paper saying, wow, this is the next stage of corporates and companies, and this is eventually going to replace everything, and then it failed. What are your thoughts on where DAO is, like status quo of the DAOs, and in general on-chain governance?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can repeat some things I said this morning, but so I'm really excited about the potential of DAOs because, to me, a big part of the Ethereum vision is this idea of experimenting with new forms of collaboration, new forms of organizations, whether that's replacing aspects of existing nonprofits, corporations, maybe political systems eventually, and basically using the Ethereum blockchain as a substrate for running these kinds of experiments at first, but hopefully big real things down the road. And the fact that people are trying all of these things, whether it's Molok DAO and all of its children, whether it's Aragon and the others, I think it's very good that the experimentation is happening. I have been critical of specific aspects of DAOs, but guys, I criticize you because I love you, right? It's like I want to see the DAOs succeed, and when people come up with on-chain algorithms that are susceptible to vote bribing attacks, it just makes my heart feel just so painful, plutocracy gives me heartburn.
Would you consider a part of ETH 2.0 in the future of Ethereum to have on-chain governance like Tezos has?
So the whole voting and collusion issue, as I've wrote in multiple articles about, is one of the big reasons why I distrust on-chain governance. If you just look at the fairly rigorous standards to which we subject, say, blockchain consensus protocols like Casper FFG, no on-chain governance protocol that exists today comes anywhere close to satisfying that same kind of academically rigorous standard of security, and that's just a fact. And so, that's the deep fundamental reason why I think on-chain governance, something that that would be institutionalized is just a bad idea at the moment. Now,
so you don't trust DAOs yet?
So, okay, hold on. So there are DAO-y things that I like, even things that exist in the present. So for
what are the best example of DAOs today?
Yeah, so the feature of Molok DAO that had the rage quit feature is something that I really like. It doesn't solve the problems, but it does basically say if the problems anywhere get too bad, you can just exit and join somewhere else. And that's
Molok is great because it's simple at this point. And so we built a new trust foundation for the planet, and we're building collaboration systems. That's what I think this technology is all about. It's trust, it's collaboration, it's digital scarcity. And in these collaboration systems, we're going to have lots of different people, whether it's at the protocol level or at the application layer. We're going to have lots of people organizing to do different things, raise money, run projects, and they will all need governance. And decentralized organizations or decentralized autonomous organizations are the way that we're going to have to do that. They give us the opportunity to build governance systems bottom up, to experiment with governance systems, and it's going to take a while to figure all that out. We're actually moving pretty quickly in figuring things out in the decentralized protocol ecosystem. So I imagine there will be some real breakthroughs over the next few years on how we can work better together.
So I'd love to understand better like the relationship between consensus and the Ethereum Foundation, right? So I'm basically sitting here with two different entities. You can kiss and hug. But some, I mean, some blockchains, when you talk about sort of the entire ecosystem, a lot of people saying there's still competition for that smart contract blockchain. Who's going to win that space? I have a good feeling I know who you're going to say is going to win that. But some of them are relatively very sort of formally more centralized, run things sort of as one organization, the investment arm, the labs, the foundation, etc. Here, basically two separate entities. How does that collaboration work? And when did that split?
So the collaboration works because virtually everybody at Consensus believes that the strongest protocol in the decentralization space is Ethereum. We are open to interoperating with different protocols, and some of our projects are trying to figure out how to support other systems. But essentially, in my opinion, it will be unbelievably difficult to establish a new layer one protocol. A guy named, I think, I listened to the Into the Ether podcast. A guy named Matteo Leibowitz was on it, and he described Bitcoin and Ether's issuance as immaculate. And any project after, say, 2015 is going to have to contend with something that he called the distribution quadrilemma. The distribution quadrilemma involves needing to issue broadly and fairly all of your tokens, enabling all of your tokens to appreciate in value so that the people who bought the tokens, your community, are happy. They stay in your community. It has to bring enough revenue into your project so that you can build out your project and survive for a long time. And the difficult part in 2019 is it has to be regulatorily compliant. The SEC, our friends at the SEC, Bill Hinman gave a talk a while ago about Ether or Ethereum and Bitcoin being sufficiently decentralized, as though that's a new legal construct. They're starting to think of it as one, I guess. And so right now it will be unbelievably difficult because these projects are seeking VC investment. So these projects are basically being run by VCs and the founders. It will be incredibly difficult to decentralize those projects. So that's why we build on Ethereum.
So I heard you at the OECD say very clearly, Ethereum has already won this game. There's no competition. We're the smart contracts platform.
So it's very difficult
to compete.
It's certainly possible. I mean, if somebody comes up with a mechanism for distributing tokens in a maximally decentralized way, if somebody comes up with a 10x better technology, they could potentially get enough attention and rapidly build out an ecosystem. Building out the ecosystem is enormously difficult. I mean, that's a huge amount of work.
So Vitalik, what do you think about Tron?
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty sunny over there.
What are your thoughts of competition? So when you build Ethereum, you were disappointed that the Bitcoin community hasn't embraced Ethereum
Mhm.
because they're priests of the Bitcoin religion. They're sort of trying to
Yeah,
protect
so
it.
I guess
What's
it's a question by kind of not hugging and embracing people like sketchier than ourselves. Are we not being maximalist ourselves? And I don't think so. Um, but yeah, and I think Ethereum, the way that Ethereum is going to make a name for itself and thrive is basically just like by repeatedly not falling off over its own feet and breaking when many other projects fall over their own feet and break. Like there's just so many ways that a new blockchain can fail, whether it means having your DPoS validators captured by a cartel where all the participants bribe each other to vote for each other. Whether it's
that sounds familiar.
yeah, whether it's having a founder get told by a government to stop being so crazy with the marketing, whether it's just having a system. Claiming to provide zero fees and having that system not survive the first time someone
So you
has
are
a
a critic of other
blockchain.
blockchains.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of ways in which these blockchains are going to realize once they're live that like yes, running a public blockchain is really damn hard. I mean, people have forgotten even something like the 2016 Shanghai DOS attacks. Like we had a determined attacker basically spend over a month finding every single bug in the two major Ethereum clients to basically slow the Ethereum chain to a crawl.
I got like 15 emails from
Yeah.
maximalists back then telling me, you
Yeah.
see,
Yeah.
Ethereum doesn't work.
So,
Yeah,
we,
yeah,
but
and,
we
like,
need
we crossed that
Ethereum is
bridge.
anti-fragile. We
Yeah.
need that sort of activity to continually make us
Yeah,
better.
and, like-
Essentially, what you're witnessing here is the
Yeah.
building of the next internet, the decentralized World Wide Web, and it's difficult when you're doing it out in public. Building the first internet and the first World Wide Web, it was done on 9600 baud modems and 14.4 and 28.8 baud modems, and
Mhm.
those systems were really hard to use and really hard to build on. They had the advantage that they were doing it pretty much with nobody watching.
So there's no doubt that I think that the first killer application on Ethereum was ICOs. And we saw that ICO craze back in 2017. Within that ICO, a lot of companies got funded, a lot of good teams got funded, but there's also a lot of sketchy things happening in that ecosystem. Do you think Ethereum Foundation has any sort of responsibility for that, or not?
Yeah, so one of the things that I care about is this idea that I think the crypto space should demonstrate the utility and value of decentralization by and ultimately using decentralization to solve our own problems. And one example of this is things like social key recovery and multi-sig wallets to improve security. One of these is like non-custodial and decentralized exchanges as a way of mitigating exchange thefts. In the ICO space, and I think there's a lot of kind of underexplored opportunity to use smart contracts to basically come up with better mechanisms that don't have the same kind of horrible incentive misalignments that ICOs do. So I came up with DAICOs 1.5 years ago as a kind of example of a way of doing this. One really interesting idea that I heard very recently is this is a post on ETH Research. It's something called a public interest project. And the way that a PIP works is basically that instead of you sending your Ether into an ICO and just giving it to the developers directly, people take DAI and they put their DAI into a smart contract. And then the smart contract takes the DAI and basically puts it into Compound. And then you take the interest from that, and it's just the interest that goes to the developers. And the thing that's nice about this, right, is that the developers basically get a steady stream of funding. But if the developers at any point either decide to run off with their money to some place in some part of the world where nobody can find them, or whether they just stop doing a good job, or whether just you personally as an individual are unhappy, anyone has the right to take their money out of the contract and basically stop supporting this project.
But how do people get the benefit? So if I put my DAI into a smart contract
Yeah.
that goes to developers, how do I gain from what the developers are doing?
Oh, so basically, if this is a non-profit, then the point is that like you don't get
Okay.
a benefit except the fuzzies. If it's a for-profit, then like you would get tokens in proportional to basically the amount of interest that got generated paid to the project. So I mean, I'm not claiming that this particular idea is necessarily the best, but I'm like it's ideas like that I think it would be interesting to kind of see more experimentation in.
So you talked a bit about nonprofits. A big part of sort of Libra's discussion is financial inclusion. We at eToro are talking about the Good Dollar Project.
Big part of their rhetoric is
Of the
financial.
rhetoric is financial inclusion. We are very passionate about universal basic income opportunity on the blockchain through the Good Dollar experiment. How much is both Consensus or the Ethereum Foundation sort of supporting, involved in specifically things like UBI, financial inclusion, obviously understanding we're not there yet to solve things like financial equality and inclusion?
So we do a fair amount of social impact work. We have projects that have enabled the building of a remittance, an intrastate remittance system in the Philippines. We have enabled aid payments to Vanuatu. We've enabled the cleanup of trash via bounty systems in the Philippines again. So we do a handful of different projects. We actually have been a little bit involved in a UBI project. Probably the best person somewhere out there is Martin Kopelman, who's been a big proponent of UBI, and we work very closely with Gnosis. They're one of our original teams. So big fan. It'll take time. I think the Good Dollar approach is very interesting. You could potentially bootstrap that. Should we talk about that a little bit? It's enabling people to sign up and get
one good dollar a day
good
keeps
dollar
the
a
banker
day.
away.
And then this individual will contact lots of different companies, I believe, and ask them to accept a good dollar and see if they can bootstrap the ecosystem that way.
Yeah, so one kind of piece of infrastructure that's important for in both UBI and other kinds of kind of egalitarian themed applications is identity. Like,
Yep.
If you're going, I think it is necessary ultimately to have tooling in the blockchain ecosystem to recognize people and not just coins, as Glenn Weil would say.
But that's not really necessarily a complex problem. I mean, there
it
are
can be.
a lot of different solutions.
Well,
Maybe
it's a
purely
lot of-
decentralized is
Well, and-
problematic, but just taking a
there are
hash
lot
of a face.
Well, hold on. There are a lot of solutions. Are there? Like, if I wanted to build a smart contract that just automatically issues a coin to every unique human, like, how do I do that? Like, what contract do I talk to? Like, what is the tooling that I'd use right now? Like, you'd have to pretty much build the thing yourself.
You'd have to have a centralized oracle
No, you
No,
would
like-
not.
verifying.
Like,
You
at the
definitely
that's,
would
one,
very-
that's one option.
I see,
Yeah, like,
sure.
at
You
the
could.
very least, there should be a centralized oracle that like anyone can use to kind
Yeah,
of.
let's
sign
use
up.
Facebook.
That's
Yeah, I
that,
mean-
that's more clickbait here.
Yeah, like at the very least, there needs to be a kind of general purpose centralized oracle that someone can use to just like verify themselves as a unique person, and then people can start building on top of that. Like obviously, a centralized oracle is like very massively imperfect, and we need to keep improving on it over time. But like even that baseline thing doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, so the raw technology for decentralized identity exists. It's being administrated by the Decentralized Identity Foundation. That's a really good construct. We need more scalability to enable that to work at scale, and we need reasons for people to onboard themselves to establish their own decentralized identity and register it on a blockchain, or it's not even necessarily dependent on a blockchain, but blockchains make it much better, and they make blockchain much better. And so when we have different vectors for adoption, we have the tools to enable people to control their own identity and thereby have greater economic and political agency once they have their own decentralized identity.
Let's talk a bit about decentralized finance. That's a very, very hot topic. Just rapid questions. What's the best, you think, use case currently for decentralized finance?
The thing that I love the most is Uniswap. Yeah, and it's just simple. Like trade any token for any other token, trustless, very gas efficient. It works great. No centralized Oracle dependencies. No centralized anything dependencies.
Yeah, so I think all the pieces are still pretty immature. They're very usable by crypto nerds, by developers, by early adopter financial nerds, and the pace of innovation is just astonishing. So I don't think that they should be used by more naive individuals at this point. We need to build greater functionality. We need more liquidity in the system. We need much better user interfaces. We need to make it really simple to understand these systems and use these systems.
Sure. So just before opening to the crowd for a couple of questions, so start thinking about your questions. There has been a bit of feeling, and which is why, by the way, I think the Israeli community really appreciate this conference and would love the commitment of both of you that it will repeat next year. There has been a feeling, that there has been some detachment between Ethereum, either foundation consensus, and the Israeli community for the first couple of years. Do you feel Israel community has been left behind, is more maximalist, and maybe because of that than other communities?
So I think what may have happened was when Vitalik came here, he was so compelling on the Bitcoin side of things and the colored coin side of things that the community sort of got stuck a little bit for a couple of years. I don't think it was that the Ethereum community didn't embrace Israel.
We wanted to make Vitalik Aliyah.
Exactly.
That's moving you to Israel.
I'll explain that to you later.
Yeah.
So
maybe you were a butter target for Aliyah.
And this is true. This is true in Silicon Valley, where the priests of Silicon Valley knew that Web 2 was the one true way, except for some of the people who saw this other thing, and that was Bitcoin, and they kind of got stuck there for quite a while. And so we saw much greater adoption in other parts of the world than in these places that kind of knew they were doing the right thing already.
So if we love you now, you love us back. That's what you're saying.
We've always loved you.
Okay. Vitalik, do you love Israel?
Yeah, Israel's cool. Yeah.
Okay, with that, any questions? We probably have like 3, 4 questions.
So this subject was briefly touched on.
Wait. In order to hear your questions, either shout or guys just put the.
Oh, sure.
I don't think mine's working.
Go ahead.
So this subject was briefly touched on in your guys' talk. This subject was briefly touched on in your guys' talk a second ago. The concept of Ethereum as a platform for non-money applications. And Vitalik, you seemed ready to hand off the role of money to Bitcoin. I believe there's a growing population inside the Ethereum ecosystem. One I identify in as the camp of ETH as money. And I would contend that a proof-of-stake smart contracting platform can actually emulate money far better than a proof-of-work hard cap money. And I was wondering if you actually do think that Ether could be a global permissionless store of value asset that would be most functional.
Yeah, Ether absolutely can be money if the community wants it to be.
Yeah, so my friend Mike Novogratz speaks regularly about. So first of all, he has good understanding of the Ethereum ecosystem, but he feels like when he's talking to different kinds of investors, including the early adopter institutional investors, he can't put together a really simple narrative so that they can jump in. And so that's going to take time for us to show them the value proposition of essentially a new kind of decentralized World Wide Web. Ether can be a better money than Bitcoin, but what he's able to communicate is the store of value use case. And so Bitcoin's got that locked up, at least for a little while. I imagine that, this may be a little controversial, if you have a token that is potentially functionally a much better money than Bitcoin, and it also has true intrinsic utility, then it's likely to grow in usage as a money.
ETH has a lot of intrinsic utility as a reserve asset for the Ethereum ecosystem. It's the only and fully trustless asset that can be used as collateral for a lot of decentralized finance applications. It's the natural asset to use for things like security deposits. It's the most convenient asset to use for payments between Ethereum applications. So, kind of the road to the usefulness of ETH as a thing is a different road than the road taken by the Bitcoin community, but it is still it's definitely
It has its usability, basically.
yeah.
So we like to say Bitcoin digital gold, Ethereum digital oil. You need cars and you need stuff to run on oil, and you can see that usage on a daily basis. Do we have time for a couple of more questions?
Hi guys, can you hear me? Okay, thanks for coming.
No.
You know, so as I look at you guys, that's a fall. I can't help but feel that you, in a very kind of inherent and profound sense, are the future of Ethereum, and yet I know that that's not what you want, right? Like I feel like with consensus and with what you do.
Am I the future of Ethereum? I mean, that whole Phase 0 interoperability workshop happens pretty much without my permission.
Right, but still, you know, everyone follows you, Vitalik. Everyone, you know, is really intrigued to hear what you say. So I guess the question is, how do we take that next step? You know, and how do we kind of spread beyond, again, consensus and Vitalik, who are doing, no doubt, wonderful things to the ecosystem and helping it grow? How does the ecosystem take that next step autonomously?
So the ecosystem has already taken so many next steps in parallel. Vitalik is a great mind, a great researcher, and by example, a great leader, but I've never seen him tell anybody to do anything. And it's a very decentralized ecosystem. It's got its own momentum at this point. As you heard earlier, Vitalik may be considering a World of Warcraft career, which could draw a lot of his attention. If Vitalik took time off, we would lose a great researcher, a great mind that is definitely, and he's not just writing about Ethereum, he's writing about collusion systems and crypto economics. So that would be a tremendous loss to the world, but the Ethereum machine would just keep chugging.
Choka, 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 choka.
Time for more questions?
Yeah, I have a very simple question actually.
Speak loud, because we can't hear you.
All right,
Just speak loud.
Can you hear me? I have a very simple question. In your opinion, what is the killer app for blockchain? And the same question for Ethereum, in your opinion. It could be futurist, it doesn't have to be now.
Killer app, number of users. What would bring the maximum number of users, the next 100, 200 million?
So Ethereum is a killer ecosystem. Bitcoin is a killer application. So cryptocurrency is a killer application. It's less useful in economies that have excellent payment systems. It's incredibly useful and life-changing in other ecosystems. Being able to do democratized fundraising and in a democratic way participate in investing is a killer application that has been enabled by the Ethereum ecosystem, whether it's utility tokens that you're able to purchase to participate in a community or tokenized securities. And there are projects that, at least in Germany now, that you don't have to be accredited in order to use these essentially bearer instruments and trade them peer-to-peer. Decentralized finance, gaming. I believe Vitalik said at some point in the past that it's going to be something like life by 1,000 cuts, or the opposite of death by 1,000 cuts. It's what's the killer application of the internet?
Yeah,
So many things.
The killerness of the ecosystem is not the nodes, it's the links, right? It's
Bless you.
wow, you would clap for that. It's not the link, it's not the nodes, it's the links, right? It's the fact that you have Uniswap, and now anyone can just go ahead and build an application that lets people pay in one currency and automatically send another currency to whoever needs to be paid, because Uniswap is just always there in the middle and you can trust it and build on top of it. Now, because you have DAI, anyone can just take DAI and shove it into a DeFi thing, and now you have a DeFi thing that you can use to earn interest on DAI. It's now you have Augur and you have Kleros, and anyone can build an application that just automatically plugs into one of those systems and uses it as a mechanism for gathering information about the outside world. Like every single application that gets built is not just an application in its own right. It is also a component that every future thing on the Ethereum ecosystem can benefit from, and that's ultimately where the power comes from.
Yeah, so the killer characteristic of the Ethereum ecosystem is composability. The fact that you can glue or compose a bunch of different protocols or products into something more complex, or that they can easily build on one another permissionlessly, is a breakthrough. The internet, it was described that the internet was architected in a way that if it saw censorship, it would route around that. It would treat it as damage and route around it. The decentralized World Wide Web will see silos as damage and route around those things.
I think free money is a great killer product. A fairly distributed free money system. That's a great product. Are you guys okay with a couple of more questions?
Yeah,
good,
let's
sir.
have questions.
Okay,
Okay, we're gonna have three more.
three more.
So I was surprised when Johnny. So I was positively surprised when Johnny mentioned that ICOs as a killer feature. And my question to you goes, where do you see asset tokenization of real assets taking place? And how do you see the Oracle dilemma about, who is storing the assets, taking care of it, and so on involved there? And when I say assets, I'm referring to like collectibles.
That's for me?
Yeah, for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're very, very big believers in the tokenization of traditional finance, because that's where we're coming from. So we think stablecoin is a great decentralized finance sort of core element. Once you have traditional financial elements on top of Ethereum, which all our stablecoins are, then you can start building very smart things, very smart financial contracts. Happy to hear Vitalik and Joe about it.
Sure. So certainly it's much easier to operate on natively digital assets, but we do need to connect to the real world, whether we're connecting to real estate or diamonds or gold or money, US dollars or bottles of wine. We need to figure out reduce the impedance mismatch between those two worlds. And Oracle systems are not going to be great for a little while. We're going to have to figure out ways to make them more decentralized, and they're not going to be decentralized at the algorithmic protocol level. They're going to have to be decentralized at the social consensus layer. So we need to figure those things out. We need to build tamper-proof devices so that we can, it's fine to create a digital certificate indicating that you own this rare bottle of wine. And if people buy into the fact that you have to transfer that certificate along with the bottle of wine, otherwise the bottle of wine's authenticity is called into, is not certain, at least, that sort of system can work, but it's very likely that we will need to build even better systems that have tamper-proof containers or something like that. So it's going to take a few years to marry the natively digital world with the analog world, but once we can move all of our transactions into natively digital form, because right now our transactions, when they make use of analog forms, analog money, analog securities, analog identity, analog agreements, they all have clearing and settlement that lasts for hours or days or weeks. But once all of those things become natively digital, clearing and settlement moves into the instant of the transaction. And if you can do that sort of thing, you squeeze all the delays and the frictions out of your economy, and that'll be a tremendous growth engine.
Yeah, and we have about like 5 versions of tokenized dollars on Ethereum with varying degrees of quality at the moment, and and I can easily see
So
that.
that's like 100 projects, but 5 different types.
Yeah, and I can see other kind of assets becoming tokenized on Ethereum too, and if corporate governance being kind of partially blockchain based in some way is something that I think is interesting and could start happening. I mean, current structures for doing that sort of thing are just so inefficient. And like having it be on a blockchain really does provide a lot of important side benefits. Other kinds of assets starting to happen already. I can see it slowly happening more and more over time. No, I think it's just a slow process, and at some point it'll start accelerating.
So you believe if the world is being tokenized, it's going to be tokenized on Ethereum? How much assets,
and
10
other
years from
protocols
now,
too. So
how much assets are tokenized on Ethereum if you look at the total market cap of assets on Ethereum?
No, dude, it'll be tokenized by Bitcoin SV. Those guys have 512 megabyte blocks, man. How can we compete?
So Ethereum is one of the very few projects in the world that is focused on maximizing decentralization in various different dimensions of decentralization, and you need maximal decentralization to build a trust infrastructure. And so the really valuable assets need to be on a maximally decentralized platform. Less valuable assets, game cards, etc., there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to be on their own sort of layer 2 cloud, either not connected into the layer 1 trust infrastructure or actually connected into it.
Okay, I got like a note. We're continuing the questions until like 12 midnight, if that's fine. Go ahead.
Should we order pizza?
Yeah. Order 100 trays of pizza.
No, come on, we're in Israel.
Yeah.
Falafels.
Falafels. Falafel coins.
So today, the ecosystem of DeFi is primarily centered around the concept of over-collateralization. I put in my ETH, and then I can take out a loan against it, which is arguably prohibitive against somebody who isn't already part of the ecosystem. No Chilean farmer is going to put in $200 to buy ETH to take out a $100 DAI loan. Where do you see as the path to under-collateralized loans or DeFi that's focused on someone who's not currently in the system? Does identity play a role in this, and how do we get to there?
So it's insurance, in my opinion. We need to build systems that are simple and complexify them from the bottom up. But as you're aware, if you want to use state channels or other mechanisms, you have to lock up a bunch of value, and that's just not a good system. There's no reason why I should have to lock up value in order to pay for my coffee through a state channel, through a payment channel. There will be businesses that just don't care about the loss. There will be ways of ensuring actual channels or endpoints of channels, people and businesses. And so that should, there will certainly be some reasons to have over-collateralized financial instruments, but I think insurance is the way forward. And
So-
that can make use of identity, but it doesn't need to make use of identity in all situations.
So in a lot of these places that really would benefit from financial inclusion, there is this primitive that's often called a rotating savings and credit. That's often called a rotating savings and credit association. So you have a bunch of people and have come together in a circle, and they all agree to put money into the circle, and either they can take money out of the circle in some specified order, or you can kind of modify this primitive in a bunch of ways. You can allow people to take out money if like something bad happened to them, they had a medical expense and they suddenly need to pay for it and things like that. So these kinds of systems could potentially be kind of smart contractified as well. Like basically the common idea here, right, is that in these places, like the people and their credit worthiness is not currently legible to centralized institutions, but it definitely is legible to each other and to people they know. And so if we can build systems that can take advantage of and support and kind of help to scale that kind of trust, then that's a base on top of which a lot of very valuable financial things can get built.
So identity, credit, then insurance or pooling of credit. Go ahead.
So it seems this week and the past few weeks, interoperability has been a big part of the conversation. If interoperability is a big part of the conversation, how do we sincerely come together to help the ecosystem across chains, through Ethereum or other chains, so that we could work towards a solid future together?
One concrete technical answer is that the Ethereum community can work hard to just build light clients for every other blockchain that would live inside of the Ethereum blockchain. And once that exists as a component, it becomes very easy to build applications that talk between the two blockchains. So for example, one thing that already either exists or is under development, I'm not sure the status. This is James Prestwich's project, this kind of one-way decentralized exchange between Bitcoin and Ether. And the way that this works is basically that on the Ethereum side, you make a smart contract that has some ETH locked up, and you have what's basically a reverse Dutch auction. So you have an ETH to BTC exchange rate that starts off being very unfavorable to the Bitcoin side, but then kind of becomes more and more favorable to the Bitcoin side over time until it gets claimed. And the way that you claim it is you send a transaction to the destination address on the Bitcoin side, and then you wait a few blocks, and after a few blocks, you provide a light client proof to the Ethereum side. The Ethereum side verifies the light client proof, and if the light client proof is correct, then the trade happens automatically, right? So this is kind of fully trusted intermediary, free, censorship-resistant, decentralized, all the nice buzzwords, and we have a way of moving between the Bitcoin and the Ethereum ecosystems. So, yeah, more things like that, I think, would be a good place to start.
Yeah, we have a similar project called Liquality that does unintermediated atomic trustless swaps between Ether and Bitcoin using hash time locks.
And will you guys support interoperability between Libra and Ethereum?
Yeah, we're in talks.
I don't. So I think if the wallets connect to both systems, then there will be some interoperability. And if Libra gets stood up, it will be, I think, very good for the Ethereum ecosystem. I don't see it being a viable candidate for a decentralized finance infrastructure for the planet, but I do see it being probably an excellent onboarding mechanism for Ethereum.
You know, there's definitely people like looking into the possibility of making a Libra light client that runs in Ethereum and or vice versa. I think it's we should extend an open hand, including to systems ecosystems that are more centralized than we would like, and also because ultimately what it does is it gives the users of those ecosystems more options, and it gives them the ability to move over to the Ethereum side trustlessly and intermediary free and do things over here.
So Vitalik extending an open hand to Mark Zuckerberg here from Israel. Any more
Clapping
questions?
for that.
2 more questions. Okay, no pizza then. Where's the question?
Right over there.
Raise your hand.
Can you hear?
I can hear.
Right by the exit sign, underneath the green exit sign. Go ahead.
I cannot hear.
We're not hearing. No.
This working?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, now I just flew in from South Africa this morning, and we've been working with our Reserve Bank. And one of the things that they've been really excited about was a pilot project, Project Coca, where they used the Ethereum infrastructure to create an interbank settlement system. And I just want to know if you were directly involved, or if you want to comment a bit on that.
Sure. That was a team of ours called Adhara, and they built. So they came out of Santander Bank initially, and they've built Ethereum-based infrastructure. They actually started on Ripple, but couldn't make it work on Ripple because they found a flaw in the protocol. So they basically built an interbank cross-border payment system that clears and settles in 10 seconds, and they are able to use that for real-time gross settlement systems. We've used it in with the Monetary Authority of Singapore and the South African Reserve Bank. It's a liquidity management system. It's a treasury management system, and it can be a payment system.
Another question. Last one. Last question from Dror. I think maybe Dror wants a commitment to know that
So
you're
welcome
coming
back to
here
the stage, our
in
Managing
2020.
Director of Consensus Israel, Dror Avieli.
So first of all, thank you very much, everybody, for coming, for the sponsor, for the speaker, and obviously for you guys. And my last question is just to follow Yoni's question. Are we having commitment to have another amazing Ethereal in 2020 in Tel Aviv?
Putting me on the spot. Should ask. Yeah, he doesn't mess around. Fortunately, Consensus is a decentralized organization, and it's not my call.
I knew it's coming.
Thank you very much, everybody.
But thank you, Dror. You've done an unbelievable job, and thank you to the whole Ethereal team. This has been a great one.
Thank you very much. It's really a great opportunity. Thank you, Vitalik. Thank you, Joe. And we're looking forward to seeing you more in Israel together.